Be quiet over here.
Hey, Peter, I'm getting a message that meeting is now streaming live, so.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 11th lecture of the Lawrence Technological University College of Architecture and Design virtual lecture series. My name is Peter Davis, and on behalf of the Lectures and Exhibitions Committee, I'm happy to introduce Jeevak Badve as our speaker today. But first, a bit about our college. The College of Architecture and Design offers degrees in architecture, game design, graphic design, industrial design, interior design, and transportation design. It is dedicated to the pedagogy of theory and practice. That is the original motto of Lawrence Technological University, advocating not one or the other, but both integrated and coherent. So we often look for people outside the college to come and share their inspirational thoughts and vision. We're joined by Jeevak Badve this evening. Now, if you live in Southeast Michigan and don't know Jeevak, what's your excuse? You will meet him, and it is about time you did. So Jeevak brings energy, passion, and curiosity to his role as Director of Strategic Growth at Sundberg Farrar. He helps companies understand the fundamental role of industrial design thinking, that is leveraging usefulness, usability, ergonomics, and aesthetics as unique and compelling differentiators of design. He is a rallying voice for the alignment and inclusion of end users' unmet needs, unspoken wants, and unarticulated desires to the core of value proposition of both products and services. Value proposition. My students should take note that someone other than myself speaks of value propositions. Jeevak has 25 years of work experience, 7 years in India, 18 years in the US, starting with GM Design Center, ASC, and now at Sundberg Farrar. Jeevak has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Pune University, a master's degree in industrial design from the Indian Institute of Technology in Bombay, or Mumbai, as you prefer, and an executive MBA from Michigan State University, the Eli Broad College of Business. Go green.
Go white.
OMG, MSU has a couple 100,000 of my hard-earned dollars. He also is a board member of the Industrial Design Society of America, the Michigan Design Council, the Detroit Creative Corridor Center, and the Aether Group, which is a think tank for transformational learning and creative leadership. His favorite 3 discussion topics are, number 1, human-centric design, as in the fundamentals of industrial design thinking. Number 2, the impact and value of product design for sustainable and successful business growth. And number 3, future scenario planning and leveraging innovation strategies to anticipate the unknowns. Jeevak, welcome and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you again, Peter and Liz, for having me here. And today evening, I think the main agenda should be to have fun. We'll try to learn a little bit about, or I will try to share a little bit about industrial design and typically what we do. But I think one of the main things we should do today is not wait till the end for any Q&A. It's a pretty small group. Let's try to make it a little bit more engaging as we are talking, or even before we talk. If you want to throw some questions out there on the chat, it will be nice for me to understand where to take the discussion, and we can go anywhere, reasonably anywhere we want. We will still try to cover some main topics that we talked about, but if we want to talk about specific things, design or research or strategy or business, let's not wait till the end. Let's try to have an engaging conversation as we are going forward. So I will try to make sure I will take some meaningful pauses in between, just to make sure we can have somebody to raise their hand, and you can just, you are on a mute, so unmute yourself and just ask the questions directly right there. Please feel free to stop me anytime. I will introduce a little bit about our studio. We will talk definitely about Tiger. We'll talk about one step before the Tiger also. Tiger is the third installation in the entire series that we did for this client. So we can at least talk about a little bit before that. And we'll just make sure that we'll also try to then end our discussion on our POV, the point of view. And that's what I think should be the main elements to go forward with. What are the main things we assume, we anticipate, and we try to derive for some of our clients. So having starting with that means no matter what, at the end or maybe at the second part, we will be talking about Tiger. It is a future scenario. It is still a conceptual kind of a domain, but that is still the best way to go forward. Means I think Peter mentioned about our studio. We have been in design for the last 87 years. We are the second longest standing design studio in the entire nation. Started right here in Detroit in 1934, and I just feel myself lucky to be now with the studio to just see this amazing legacy of work done for clients, small and large. This image that you're seeing right now on the screen, that's a similar future scenario. This was in 1950s, early 1950s, when we did the Miracle Kitchen for Whirlpool. So what you see there is, if you see on the left side, that's an autonomous dishwasher. That's a command center in 1950s, before the computers. That's a Roomba, literally the forebears of Roomba that we have it over here. And this was all, I'm not joking, cardboard models, plywood models. The shelves were automatic. When I say automatic, you gesture your hand and the shelves will lower themselves down to take out your spices and condiments. But it was everything literally a pulley and a rope behind the scenes kind of a thing. It was literally as a dumb a model it would be on the back side, but on the front side, people had an experience, or at least a window to an experience of what future might be, or ought to be, or is going to be generated with. So the entire element is, it might be the Tiger we are going to look at, or this was maybe more than 60, 70 years ago. Building scenarios is a pretty fundamental tool of understanding what would need to happen, not just building the product. And when I say product, it can be an object and a gizmo, a gadget, a device, an equipment, an implement. Not just that simple isolated product. You have to make sure consciously that you build the surrounding ecosystem around it as a future scenario, and then making sure how that product fits into the surrounding scenario. So we will be talking about mobility, but typically as a studio, we do three things. We design mobility products, and when I say mobility, the entire range of last mile, transit, airplane, a range of different things. We also do a lot in the world of medical and commercial products, which typically you or me might will not be buying, but will still be using, or it might be used by pack of and contractors or fleet owners. And consumer products, no matter in and out, the products in your kitchen, the products in your garage, the products in your bathroom, a day in and day out use of products. So we are pretty decently balanced across the portfolio as a consultancy, and we are a fee for service consultancy studio, and we work with a range of different industries as such. And between those industries also, the next question we get is like, whom do you work with? So literally all the industrial evolution phases. On the extreme right, we work with Fortune 5000 companies, big enterprise, globally located companies, where the product culture, the understanding, the maturity of product design is different than extreme on the left side, where it is more startup culture. There is nothing wrong. The entire element of innovation more or less remains the same, but the way you can use some of the processes, or you can have to use some of the laid principles of that brand becomes pretty important. On the right hand side, You are given a brand, a playbook with which you might want to work with, what the company stands for. On the left, with the startups, you actually start designing the elements that you stand for, and you finally make up what those kind of an experiential elements are going to. And the third part is within a same company, it might be big or small. As a design studio, we work in all the three product development stages, right? On the right hand side, not every product has to be breakthrough, change the world, stop the world hunger, kind of an, I would say, a design ambition. Always good to have that, or depending upon your time horizon. But predominantly, if you see, most of the products will be in the boundary level innovation element, where you see your competition, you raise one ante, you go for line extensions, year to year model changes, line refreshes, trying to still make use of your tools or your capital intensive kind of an elements over there. And then on the left, again, the incremental innovation, the literally everyday innovation, faster, better, cheaper, lightweight, a little bit more sensorified, a little bit more smarter. So it's not a complex element, but if you start to just try to make sure you compartmentalize those, that's how we typically to fit in the world as a studio as such. And as an example, I think we don't need to give an example of what consumer products are, but just look around yourself. It might be under the kitchen cabinets, it might be a toaster, it might be a toothbrush, it might be just pots and pans, everyday consumer goods, everyday commercial goods, right? Means we all would be filling in fuel every alternate week. We are not going to buy that gas station, but somebody has to design it eventually for the end users to get use of it. Or some things like this over here, that's a garbage disposal. Nobody sees it until the one in your kitchen conks off. Then you go to Menards or Lowe's and try to buy one off the shelf. At that time, what would be the psychology of use, the psychology of buy? Why would you need a garbage disposal, and what would be those attributes you need to work with? And then lastly, but not least, as I said, the mobility world as such, we do a lot of transit. Around 65 to 70% of the nation's transit has been done by us. That's the Long Island Railway Road interiors. We did the DART in Dallas, the MARTA in Atlanta, the BART in Bay Area, and range of other systems also. So that's, I would say, would be the element of what we do in the world of design. And no matter what, everybody wants to have a look at the studio. So that was again back in 50s. Literally, as you imagine, since then till right now, we are still doing products in and out. That's 1955 Packard all the way in the back, pots and pans and waffle machines in the front. Right now, we have this amazing COVID thing engulfing us, but eventually, when everything becomes hopefully smooth in a month or two, when everybody gets vaccinated, our studio is not that far away from LTU. We can always host a group of students over there and give you a tour of our studio. We have an open collaborative studio where all our team sits. Now everybody is right now working from their homes as much as possible. Those of us who have to go there in the studio to work with our hands, we still can go there. We are encouraged to go there, and we follow all the COVID protocols. In the center, we have a dedicated research facility, still the one-way mirror room, focus group clinics. It's essential to what we do. It means there is still going to the point of origin, trying to see what happens on the field, but that's still ethnography. We have to still bring it back and try to control some variables and try to look at the usability of the product. That's where this becomes really important. And we have a full-scale prototyping shop. We believe in delivering the actual physical pieces also. We are not contract manufacturers, but we make sure, apart from design or CAD or renderings, the actual product becomes a part of the deliverable. It might be the first 2 or 3 dozen of products for the proof of concepts, or the alpha or the beta market testings as such. And right now you can only see me as a part of our studio, but that's our beautiful studio. We are a 25 people team. We only have one location right here in Detroit. Industrial designers, researchers, innovation strategists, graphic user interface, which is now seeping into each and every product, engineering and model making. So that's typically the way our studio is built, and that's how we operate. We work like crazy, we play like crazy. So that's I would say about the studio. Let me pause over here to see whether we have any questions on the studio and the makeup, or maybe about the history as such. Any questions so far?
Jeevak, I've been to your studio and it's at a beautiful location. There's lots of woods around the backside and very tranquil. Um, and it looks like an optimal place to work. How are you considering any hiring opportunities at the moment?
Always a good question from a school. Right now, directly into design, there might not be, but eventually we would be looking out for a business development person. I do not know whether in your schools, there are 5 or 6 different schools right now that are represented over here, whether that becomes a part of your curriculum. But having said that, we are looking for a person uh, who can come from either side. So it's a spectrum. From our perspective, we can hire let's say, a salesperson and then try to teach him or her the world of a design studio,
Mhm.
or we can hire a design sensitive person, a creative person, and then teach him or her the art of sale.
Yeah,
So
gotcha.
it's difficult. Somehow we are tending to believe that it would be easier to get a person who understands the creative
Mhm.
world, who understands what design is, who has a sensitivity and the sensibility of understanding what design would be or should be. And then we will try to coach him or her or train him or her to understand the world of business development, reaching out and just creating connections with the people. So from your perspective, anybody is design minded, but also has this kind of an talking, sales, business development, communications ability, feel free for them to reach out to me.
Yeah, our juniors are preparing for summer internships and they're looking for opportunities as well. So uh, if you consider interns for the summer, that would be great. If you would consider our students, thank you.
I will definitely let you know about the element of internships, because right now still we are all working from home, and trying to make sure that if we are saying yes for internship, there has to be an, I would say, equally
Right.
a learning opportunity to be happening. And again, as I said, means we are not GM or Ford Design Studio. They're the people who would be having considerable supportive kind of an caliber to help getting the internships, even though
Yeah.
they're remote or something. We might not be better equipped for that, but again, in a couple of months, things should change. So let's all hope for the better.
Okay,
But for
thank you.
business development, anybody wants to reach out and just chat. I will drop my email in the chat field, and you can directly message me directly too.
I have a
Thank you.
question as well. You mentioned, and this is Nur Saltek, we met before. I'm the director of industrial design at LTU. You mentioned, and when I visited, I seen how you prototype and how your products developed in the studio. And you mentioned that you're using the studio less right now. How are you adapting? How did you adapt your design process with the new developments because of the pandemic?
Yeah, so that's a beautiful question. The greatest part is, means COVID happened, it's a bad thing. It accelerated the use of uh, Zoom and all those elements. But before that, before this 12 or 13 months, we have been still working with our clients, which are not just locally here from Detroit, Michigan. Our clients are across the Mississippi, East Coast, West Coast. We work across the Atlantic pond. Our clients are in China. We worked in Africa. So collaboration or remote working was always a part of our fabric, always. And we used to still fly and visit and do our final presentations over at the client side. But that never stopped us for the last at least maybe 10, 12 years of communicating and working remotely. As a team, as Sandberg Farrar, we always met in the studio where we can literally throw things at each other, but working with the client was always there. We always had collaborative tools. Now we are using it literally for every project. Miro is a pretty good tool. We swear by it. It works beautifully like a charm. Zoom, with whatever limitations it has, it works still pretty good. So in a way, nothing changed, but in a way, everything changed. But we had been used to working remotely since a lot, and some of the clients earlier used to demand or define how the interactions had to be, and they would write off like travel expenses and say you have to come here. But now everybody is in the same boat. Everybody is open to experiment or was open to experiment, and some of them long-standing old school people also said like, yeah, Zoom works too. So it's it is what it is, and we are all playing with that limitation. But we were always okay with remote collaboration.
I actually wanted to ask the part of prototyping, because when we were visiting your studio, your design team was actively prototyping, and we seen your labs and wood shop on the back. And I'm wondering if you're keeping it still live, or are you using other tools to keep it going?
So prototyping just cannot be outsourced or remotely worked. So we still have the entire lab open. As I said, those of us, let's say, who can work from home are encouraged to work from home, but hands-on design, hands-on engineering is still needed. So we still have our folks coming in the studio. We try to balance the times. We try to balance the amount of people in the studio. Our studio is pretty large for what we do. uh, uh, we have to just make sure that we follow the protocols, and we are still using it. So the studio is still open. Means product have to be manufactured, have to be tested, and then we have to work with little bit of those limitations, but it's nothing major. Literally nothing major. Means apart from that, even some of the elements that we also outsource, doing a couple of, let's say, other work processes, even those studios are open, and it's still working in a pretty good flow. There is always a time lag now built because of the amount of people who would be working on the same one, but it's not that difficult. Even not only that, we are actually doing design research. Research is a pretty big part of what we do, and we are still conducting research, qualitative research also, right now, within the protocols that CDC has laid out. We have done a little bit now more of quantitative, and through Zoom meetings as such, but we still did qualitative research also. It is still all based in the studio. We did not go to people's homes, so ethnography was not there, but the usability part of it is still all being done. Literally it all depends on the propensity of the clients and how they are looking at things and how much they are open with what they are doing. In Michigan, we have a different kind of an, I would say, a flavor of working in this environment. In some other states where the clients are, they don't know what COVID is. So it all depends on how they want, how we are also okay to work with those protocols. Right now, we are still not flying. We are still pretty local. So only those are happening which are 100-mile radius or something like that.
Cool.
But this is good. Any other questions about just the studio or the makeup? Please don't be shy. It can be about anything. No?
There are no questions in YouTube or in chat, so you may continue.
Okie dokie. Let me just try to share a new share. Let's try to talk a little bit about the Tiger vehicle as such, and I will try to share as much as I can share in this world of, I would say, public domain knowledge. So we work with many brands. Some of them are really good global brands. Hyundai is one of them, and we worked on this newer, I would say, product called Tiger, and there is an explanation of TIGER also. So before we go there, I think I do not know if some of you have researched what we do or what we have done. I would just try to show you what was in, I would say, in the charts before this came out to fruition. So 2019, 18, this was presented at CES. This was the Hyundai Cradle, which was the second stage of what we had done for Hyundai. This right now what you are seeing is a scaled vehicle, a prototype, but that was, this actually is 1:8 scale. So this was just designed to be carrying humans. So there actually will be humans inside, and it will still go and walk around as such. So it would we build few models. One was for the CES show here in the
Hey,
UK. It was, yes, go ahead. I thought I heard somebody, but feel free to stop me anytime. This was another one that we had built for the Shanghai CES show, but this was I would say human rated vehicle where you can have 4 or 6 people sitting inside. It will still be 99%, you will be using passive suspensions, but only when the last 100 yards will be there. It might be debris, it might be a tsunami might have hit, or it might be some other war zone as such, where you still want to walk over the debris with keeping the keel or the, let's say, the vehicle completely horizontal. It was predominantly designed for that. So that was a pretty I would say uh, interesting element. Before that, actually, the first installment. Let's go back over here before we go anywhere else. Before that, before the cradle, also we had done the loop, the Hyperloop, when Elon Musk had given the world a challenge about connecting 2 cities between the Hyperloop. The first one was this, was designed for connecting those 2 cities. So right now, what you see in the Tiger is an evolution of what has been done for the last 3.5 years. So I might not be able to show you the exact cut sheets of what we did immediately for Tiger, but similarly for that project also, it all starts with experiential research. So for that project, the one that was done before this, we also went to those 2 cities, Greater Los Angeles area and SF. We did the planes, trains, and automobiles where biosensors, we had GoPro cameras, and literally try to understand, okay, what needs to happen in the entire ecosystem. Just because we think we want to do a connection of a product or a vehicle, we cannot go with that way. We have to just step back and look at the entire experiential part of it. Experiential is one. At the same time, we also did our technical research too. We are a design studio, but eventually it has to be done in conjunction with the functional attributes also. So we researched a lot into the world of literally robotics. Where did we have a roboticist on full payroll at our studio? Absolutely not. But then that's what is the model of our studio. When we need somebody specific in that world, we reach out to the top 1 or 2 roboticists in the world, get them on the project for a couple of months, work with them. And we did not solve in the entirety what might be the real end loads, but it was still a kind of an, I would say, a benchmark engineering done with the topmost robotics over there. So we are still presenting it to a live client. We are not solving it for the production world, but we are still making sure it has the feasibility built into it. So the first was experiential research, then is the technical research, and then no matter what, the analytical research of what's happening, right? When we want to go and look at the future can be a plausible future scenario, a preferable scenario, a possible future scenario, but you are finally going to generate a future. Generative futuring would be over there. Then you have to really try to go and sense, and we used plenty of tools to understand in the world of design research. We use QUID as a tool to understand what's happening in the world of mobility, robotics, exoskeletons, walking, mammalian gait, reptilian gait. So it basically is a triage of things of what's going to happen. Just solving for the emotional content or got to have, and it's going to be cool, is good, but it has to be built on a pyramid, and the foundations would still be there of those nature. So understanding those 3 essential elements, and then you start building future scenarios. So when you say future scenarios, means eventually this one of them was the elevate, but it was matured later. So I'm not going to say that, let's say, Tiger or the inklings of Tiger were not only set in the first ideations 3-4 years ago. It always happens when you actually go and try to solve for some, I would say, scenarios. You'll get a plethora of ideations, and it depends on how you group them, how you cluster them, how you coalesce them, and then how you structurally put them out in the future. Like, okay, now we are going to solve this. Eventually its time will come. Eventually the Tiger's time will come. So you would see many of, I would say, the vestiges of what you see of Tiger right now already existing over there in the earlier times. And then eventually we came out with the industrial design part. Eventually, means after the scenarios, after research, after actually going through the motions, then you come and do the actual design of the car, right? I mean, it's the car design is in a way, it's the simplest, but you cannot design it in isolation. Even before reaching to the car, you have to understand what would be the design of the entire architectural scenario over there. Are we architects? Absolutely not. Some of you are architects over here, but we still have to understand what might be the architectural ramp up over there. Where would we be parking our vehicles? Where would we go and buy the tickets? What will be the length of the time in the ticket line over there? Because if you are trying to send people shuttling in from a city to city in under 20 minutes, and you have to wait in the ticketing line for half an hour, it just doesn't make sense. So you have to understand the entirety of it, of how people are going to really value, as I think as Peter was saying, on the value proposition. Over here, the value proposition was time was and is still a currency. 4 years ago, 10 years ago, or right now, or 5 years from more over here. So if time is the currency, then how you try to chop it off, trying to see is from your door to door. The moment I start my key in my vehicle on my driveway till I reach my destination and open the door over there, that is literally the transportation element, not the amount of time in the car or in a train or any other vehicle. Maybe I'm going too deep over here, but no matter what, industrial design and engineering has to be literally in alliance. Means we are a design studio, an industrial design studio. It is not just an artistic design studio. We have to make sure whatever we are going to present eventually has a stake in the ground where it can be feasible or not. It all starts in I should not say daydreaming, but starts in trying to go into what if scenarios. And that's how this started. But this has still complete, strong, physical, feasible roots into making it happen. It might still be a long shot for people to understand, like walking car, like, yeah, no, but everything, feasibility is developed in a very, I would say, strong sense. Means when this first vehicle came out in the market, people said, like, who is going to have a walking car? And that was the first 1/8 style prototype that was done for this walking vehicle. So the same thing goes back to any specialty vehicle, right? You look at the way submarines were designed or helicopter was designed. The first time, nobody thought, like, we are not going to do that. And now also, is helicopter mainstream? It is not mainstream, but it is a specialty vehicle. It is used for plenty of areas, and there is a business model to make helicopters work for certain scenarios. And there would be models, business models present for walking vehicles to come and do what they are to be doing or want to be doing as such. So at least that helps us in understanding the Tiger was not just designed out of the blue. So this was the first one as such, and then let's come back directly right now. Let's say to the Tiger and understanding the use cases as such. Before we just go with the Tiger, any questions for the Elevate or the Loop, the precursors of Tiger as such?
Um, Jeevak, I understand that Hyundai acquired Boston Dynamic, the robot company, and and I imagine that their strategies for buying that company and developing these types of new technologies is something that they're think is valuable for the future. So, can you share anything of that with us?
I I I talked with our lead person over there. I think the element I got was to say no comment to any questions about the acquisition of Boston Dynamics because it's still pretty much out over there. But what I can
Yeah.
certainly tell is, Peter, is it's an amazing, means they're our client, they're our near and dear client. It's an amazing company with an amazing vision, and I'm so glad, and there I hopefully there are half a dozen other automotive studios who are doing something similar to this. But the amount of, I would say, enlightenment that a company like this, we have been in automotive world, some of the mindsets are pretty traditional and old, but this company has some sights on some amazing parts of the futuristic world, and acquiring Boston Dynamics is one of them. and just taking the entire momentum in that direction is unheard of. Literally, means
Yeah.
I or our entire studio is so lucky that not right now this is a third project, which is literally once in a lifetime project. We stopped that for the first one and he said like, dang, this is it, we got it in our career of this, we got to do a project like that. Then Elevate came, and now it's Tiger, and it's means yeah, it all comes down with hard work and the sincerity and the integrity, and really having a mature outlook, not just from us but from the from our client and their team. But in an automotive company, to continue something like this, you understand it is so heretical strategy nowadays. Means 20, 30, 40 years ago, going to an autorama, going to a conceptual car stage was a part of every big automotive cars business, and people enjoyed that. And it did set up the public to think or oogle or dream and salivate about got to have vehicles. And then suddenly, the last 15 years or something, we saw the extinction of these kind of concept vehicles as such. And now I don't know about other companies, but Hyundai, there's a resurgence in the way it's not just concept, it's not just shapes, it's not just shininess, it's not just the chromium part of it, but literally trying to solve for a meaningful value addition. Means over here, means even though right now, means last month they timed this with the release of landing of Perseverance on Mars. That was fantastic too. Even though it's completely on different tracks, the timing was exactly over there. But the main reason of this vehicle is, by the way, this vehicle is not driver. It's a self-driving vehicle. It's an autonomous vehicle. It's a smaller vehicle. It is as big as a normal, let's say, a dining table, a 6 feet dining table kind of a thing, which is cargo enlisted to take cargo anywhere in the parts of the world. The entire element is, if there is a remote village somewhere in India, in Africa, in China, in South America, and it needs to have vaccines delivered to it, as simple as that. So how can we do it? Roads might not be there. It can ride till the end of the road. It can ride till the end of a dirt road. But the last 100 yards, literally 100 yards, is always going to be a problem. And that's where a vehicle like this will go as much as it can, and then it will walk across boulders, across streams, to deliver its payload. It can be vaccines, it can be a beating heart, or the lower right area is predominantly for the scientific community world to do remote monitoring of flora and fauna. Right now, the scientist community has to go into remote parts of the rainforest to go and observe newer animal behavior, bird behavior, take samples from those elements as such too. It's a huge cost on the ecosystem also. So there are so many different elements apart from exploring on Mars, apart from literally search and rescue, apart from the military elements. There is a humanitarian aspect of this, and that's predominantly what they want to do. And that's what it all started with the genesis of those things. And I can go, means I think most of us are students of industrial design, so actually coming back to the world of how it needs to happen, I can share some of those elements. Some of them are a little bit more, I would say, mature as such, but the entire element is to design it for a payload. So understanding what needs to be shipped, what eventually might be a part of the vaccines, medications, freezed parts, or let's say if you're going on an expedition and you want to send some last food or water elements as such. It might be a cave rescue. There are so many elements in the world where you might still need vehicles like that, designing for those. And the added aspect over here was this particular tiger, which is not that completely out in the open as it is. This is a dual element where it's terrestrial and drone linked. So not that your vehicle has to start driving from here all the way to the ends of Bolivia to deliver your vaccine. It still will be shipped by a typical transportation convoy of a truck or any other vehicle. It will be delivered to the last element where a drone can go, and then the last 100 yards would be over through rough terrain, because it has to go through the foliage, through the habitat, all the way to the ground to reach to eventually mammals or humans who might be trapped there or living over there. and it's vice versa. Sometimes you might need to charge the batteries in your Tiger, then the drone can come and do the charging for you, or it can be the other way also, where the drone might need to be charged for that vehicle. So the entire element, and you can see the videos of this on the internet. Just enter Tiger Hyundai, and you will see the videos that we did of how where it will be deployed from another vehicle, how the drone will go and drop it somewhere, and then this will go and do the last elements of journey. So all those elements were designed with the use cases as such. Again, this was not just, I think this was not just uh, thought of into a brainstorming session. This actually came with design research, trying to understand what might be the major problems which are there right now in some of the ranges of the world or peripheries of the world, or how might things evolve, and then what are the needs over there. So the need-based analysis was done in a lot, and then trying to make sure this is always going to be a feasible element too. So the first things were just designing the entire part of it, designing it for the looks come all the way at the end. This is just like any other project. We also were working on the next stage. We had a huge learning curve from the elevator also, which was still a pretty big vehicle. It was as big as a tank, but the 5 or 6 degrees of freedom that you might need uh, for the different motors over there were designed. One of the aspects, some of the aspects over there was this is symmetrical vehicle on both the planes. That means every quadrant is completely symmetrical. So there is no front, there is no back, there is no left, there is no right. So literally, this particular entire system of one leg can be, it's basically one part into four per vehicle. So eventually, the volumes, the economies of scale, how it can be replicated or not replicated. Right now, in the present automotive world, there have been some vehicles which are trying to use the front bumper as same as the rear bumper, or the doors to be as same, not even similar to be used, but somehow it doesn't work. So we had to work a lot in this world to make sure it's still, if it's moving, it can still have a sense of directionality, but from the way of doing this vehicle and reducing the complexity in a number of parts, we can still use that. One more element is right now we are still trying to make sure all the motors. So there are uh, four motors in either leg structures, trying to make sure all the four motors are exactly the same on all the four quadrants. So trying to just still making sure minimize those kind of an complexity. It is complex for sure, but then how to increase the economies of scale as we are going forward, and then trying to make sure we do it. And then the elements came in designing a completely new frame. So as a studio, we do everything. So we did the design part of it, we did the actual engineering parts of it. So we have now two roboticists on our full-time staff. They can literally make wonders. It's amazing to see uh, how you can try to design a walking vehicle. And the walking is, we are all mammals. Mammalian gait is different than a reptilian gait, and trying to understand which is better on what times, and going through the extreme ranges of that. This is still, I would say, a scale model. Then eventually it will be scaled up for the real scales as such. So all the three or four things were happening together, trying to really solve for a real use case in the life, trying to think from the world of industrial design, economies of scale, number of parts, how much things to be added, what might be the cargo weight and the volume to start with, and then actually making sure, no matter what, as I said since start, it had to have a world of feasibility. We could not just show a concept. It is not still a science project. It is a project where we have to finally give in the confidence as a design studio to the business folks of that company, and saying eventually after 20 or 15 or 10 years, this is going to be a live business model where you can start manufacturing these machines as such. So we that's actually our studio, and just working literally day in and day out for this third once in a lifetime project. Was again fruitful, taking it out inside out. There's a decent I would say vegetation and habitat behind the studio also. where we used it. Another partner in the entire element was Autodesk. They helped in 3D printing and preparing some complex geometry for the products. Now, this is actually the leg where it stands up completely. How to again go and minimize it and completely stand it over there. We have our own print shop, so we did plenty of printing on our own. Eventually, we have a 3D printing lab. We have a paint shop out in the back, and then all just things collided into each other, and then we actually made the complete tiger over there, which now you can see as an animations, as videos in the drone, and range of different things. So let me. That's actually John Sir. He's the vice president of New Horizon Studios inside Hyundai. Dave Byron, Gray Parker, and that's myself also. It's just a fun, uh, inspirational, motivational project to have to work on. It's literally surreal to see how you can keep on still working on a project like this. Let me again pause here for some time to see any questions or comments about this.
Uh, hey Ziva, yeah, this is a really nice presentation. So I guess I'll ask some question regarding like the working together between designer, because you mentioned in all your slide that your company has a multidisciplinary talent, like industrial designer, engineers, UX designers, and engineers, software developer, and all that. So if you can kind of explain, maybe using this project as an example, like how the industrial designer and the engineers, how they kind of work together, and then maybe in terms of a process, like are you guys kind of designing from inside out, or going purely from a functional perspective, and then the ID guys coming in later? Like, just kind of curious how you guys kind of work together on that. And then my second part of a question, hopefully this will benefit more of my students, is like in terms of like what sort of a talent and skill set you guys are looking for as a either if you're hiring like a transportation designer or industrial designer or GUI designer, like what sort of skill set you guys are looking for? I think those would be my two-part questions.
That's a 2x2, 4x4 question, but that's perfectly okay. So I'll try to tackle them one by one. Now, first, you talked about the methodology, the process of how it all starts, right? Because we have a makeup of, let's say, industrial design and engineering as such. So from our perspective, we have a pretty proven kind of, and I would say, let me just bring it to the front. So we call it our innovation strategy approach as such, where there is no literal demarcation of you are a designer, I am an engineer, he's a researcher kind of a thing. Even though those are the part of our multidisciplinary team, it always starts with the immersion, and the immersion, that's where we get the entire core team together. So we literally reach out to the clients predominantly and their suppliers, and get their sales guy, their legal guy, their operations guy, their strategy guy, their branding guy, uh, guy and girls also, and making sure that we start on the same page as much as possible together. It is not an extended team, it is still a core team, so we at least get one if not two representatives from that kind of an, I would say, a world of order. If eventually we're going to find like finding the motors for these legs, it's not an easy thing, because it's a pretty big vehicle, and the loads, we can talk about engineering later, it's pretty difficult, the dynamic loads and the unsprung weights on it. So we have to make sure that we also have to identify a supplier too, because it has to be finally feasible. It's not just a science project. So trying to make sure we also help identify those motor companies. And Hyundai is a big company. They went and they did some M&A acquisitions also as we are going through this process. So it's not as simple as we want to just go and try to buy a sensor. They just go and buy the company. It's a completely different dynamics. Eventually, they bought the Boston Dynamics. That's a that would help you understand how they look at something if they're serious. But coming back to the point, the main thing is the immersion part of it. That's where We actually, from our perspective, we still have a DPM, a design program manager. So he's still an industrial designer. Dave Byron, in the last photograph, he was that. So he would still be the lead, the coercing agent of getting everybody together. And then as needed, we have to make sure this core team comes in from the Hyundai and its partners. Autodesk was a partner also in 3D printing technologies as such. And then we bring in our partners, a robotist from outside, design research, or our own design researchers as such. So it all starts over there, and then eventually there is no individual swim lane as such. We all try to solve together as a team. See, collaboration is a pretty highly used word, but before collaboration becomes collegiality, how you work with each other, how you explain things to each other, how you make sure your milestone presentations are done not just internally in a design critic from designer to designer, but you are literally trying to present it to the business modeling world also, and trying to learn and understand from that. So we have a, I would say, a very good proven method of innovation strategy as such, and that's how we will start working with each other. I think that was the first part of your first question. The second element I think you mentioned was uh, you talked about the attributes of what you look out for design engineer. That might be the second part. But in the first one, what was the second part of the first question?
Yeah, sorry. Just to repeat, like the second part, like for my students, they're mostly trans major and industrial design major students, and then if they like to get into kind of like your type of a company, and then just kind of if you can share like the attributes or the skill set of generally a talent, like what you guys are looking for.
So I would actually, as we are going to go to the POV, the point of views of a studio from a design, I think are, I would say, similar to the point of view of how a person would be. So if we want to hire a person, we'll also ask him or her to climb this emotional mountain. We actually use this to let clients understand what we are solving for, right? When we say it's not product design, it is not service design, it is experiential design. What is the experiential, aspirational, emotional place to be, and then come down the mountain to see where does the design side fits in, where engineering fits in, where technology or material fits in. The similar thing we will try to make sure we will look at the attributes to hire for a person for our studio. If he or she, let's say, is a technologist, is an engineer, we would want him or her to bring on the engineering process to the table, but we'll also and want her to go all the way up to the mountain to see, okay, why are we doing this? If we do not want her as an engineer to solve a design experiential problem, but we want her to climb the mountain to see, okay, this is why there is so much sensitivity of this tint of color of or this radius, or this is the way the part line just has to be because of yada 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 yada. So that appreciation, that maturity, like, okay, now I understand why you want this, Mr. Designer. Now I will come back and I will try to use all the things I learned in my engineering world to make sure we can bring up a manufacturing process, bring up new materials to make sure you can attain that. And in the similar way, we also want the designer to climb down the mountain and saying, see, these are the world of reality. We cannot change the laws of physics. I know what you want, Mr. Designer, over there, but come and look at us of what just cannot happen. So it's a continuum where both the typical kind of intention between design or engineering or between business always happens. But the more earlier, the more sooner, the more characteristic element of that person would be to understand and have a respect for why is that other constituency asking us for that. The same thing will go for a business person too. If they are saying, yeah, we cannot do it for 67 cents, we have to do it for 64 cents, there is a reason for that. And a cent here and a cent there adds a lot as we go down the line. So that mutual appreciation, not just lateral thinking and not just problem solving, those are the table stakes. Those have to be there. But apart from that, okay, I am coming from this position to the table, and now I understand why the sales guy is asking me this, and trusting him or her in saying, okay, because of I have to pay heed to that, and then we have to work together for that those elements. So that mutual codependency and the mutual respect has to be inculcated and has to be a part of who you are, at least if you want to be a part of our studio.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate your answers. Thanks.
Awesome. Any more questions? Let's try to.
Yeah, I had a question too. This is Julia. I'm one of the juniors in industrial design. And one thing I thought was really interesting was how you mentioned
Where are you? I
that.
can see you. Have your camera is on or not?
Oh, I can turn it on.
That you have to. I was trying to find you.
One thing I find that's really interesting was like you mentioning how the walking car seems very unrealistic, but compared it to sort of how like the helicopter was originally unrealistic. So when you have these like very like forward thinking and maybe like kind of like fantastical designs, is there like compromises you make almost to like kind of make it easier for people to make that jump? Because I'm going to admit that like I was pretty skeptical of this walking car like when you first met it. So like are there like tactics you use in your design to make people like more willing to kind of embrace these like really explorative or futuristic ideas?
Which school are you from? Architectural design, graphics?
I'm from industrial design.
Awesome. So as an industrial designer, since ages, or not an industrial designer, as a human person, any idea at the get-go always sounds to be idiosyncratic. Seriously, the earth was flat. It was such an what an amazing idea when people said it is round. If you go back to the genesis of any idea, any ground revolution idea, it was always heretical, always heretical. It might be the design of a ballpoint pen, when earlier was a fountain pen. It was a design of, I don't know, the katana, the Japanese katana over the broad Chinese sword as such. Everything was heretical, and people will say like, dang, that's just not going to happen. But there will always be some resolute solution over there. There will always be some people who will be willing to approach it, and there will always be people who will be willing to experiment with it. And no matter what, most of the design, at least in the vehicular world that you see around, are the elements of the sunken in capital of the plants and of the machines and of the tools over there. Now literally we are encumbered by this complexity of moving tools, complexity of multi-core dies and tools as such. Additive manufacturing is simply bonkers right now, and you can aim to do one-off vehicles or and one-off products, I would say, very easily in a decent amount of, I would say, less money to be spent. So I think it is not just about how wild our ideas are, but also right now the maturity of what can happen to reach the world of actually a robust, durable, reliable, real product to have. The means are much more faster. And earlier it was typically designed for a demographics, like, okay, let's go design for this zip code, or let's go and design for a millennials who have 200K plus kind of an household income and all those kind of an elements, and this will be around Chicago area, this will be around Austin area. Now in a way, and now we are not just talking about vehicles or walking cars. If you are really trying to design a product, the product can be appreciated by a person remotely from Nigeria, from Burma, from Bahamas, anywhere. If they like it, they will pay for it. So that kind of an element of understanding how your clientele can be already all around the world. You don't need to have everybody together. As long as you are trying to solve for their passion points, solve for their needs, their wants, their dreams, and you can align them and build them, the customers would come over there to get it. So it might be a walking car. There are, by the way, walking car is one of the most, I would say, from the there is no hubris over here, but walking car was just one of the spectrums of the elements that even we propose to Hyundai. There are so many other really wild concepts over there, which one day might be 10 years, might be 11 years, would be straightforward state of art. Means right now, just imagine about the tires that we are using are run flat tires, right? Just 30 years ago, run flat tires was a complete different proposition. And now it is like, yeah, there is no reason why not. You don't think about it. So the adoption propensity, even for us as an end user, to use something that was completely like what I'm doing that, or we are going to do that, is pretty okay. Just look at the way the technology is now being literally used by not just the younger generation, means because of the virtual schooling, like they are right now pretty comfortable in the world of working in the digital world. But literally look back at the baby boomers, people who are 75 plus, 85 plus, who are right now thrown technology in their hands because they cannot hug their grandchildren, they cannot reach them, they cannot meet them. And the way they have just used the technology to reach out, it's amazing. 85 plus, 87-year, 88-year people are just conversant with different forms of technology. So it's in a very good way going to be a completely newer world literally from this year onwards. And we are all lucky to be a part of it. We are all lucky to have been experiencing it. And you are right now at the base of the pyramid over there. And think think beyond. Every idea has to, at first, has to be out of the ordinary to be extraordinary. Everybody wants it to be extraordinary. Everybody wants your idea to be compelling, to be unique, to be meaningful, to be beautiful. But for that, as a practitioner of design, you have to let yourself or your mind wander, then collect back and come back to reality also. But that ability to literally go, and that is a unique ability for every industrial designer anywhere on earth, to hold the two opposing thoughts in the mind at the same time. One is of this grandeur and vision of like cars could walk, could fly, go underwater, but immediately at the same time coming back to the grain of like, how can I do that now with this sensor or this motor? So this world of granularity, of actually making it feasible, and then the world of building a vision out there. If you can master that, you'll be a made guy. More. Let's keep on
Yeah, thank you.
Q&A session.
I've actually got a quick question for you, Jeevak. So Matthew Schott here. I am the vice chair for the LTU IDSA chapter. I'm in the industrial design course, and quick question for both you and Sundberg Farrar. What kind of engagement do you have with local IDSA student chapters, both as an individual and as a company?
Good question, and thanks for your volunteering time for the IDSA, I would say, association. So I think, as Peter mentioned in my bio, I'm still actively on the IDSA board. I'm still sitting on the board. This will be my last term as such. I had always been an IDSA member. I think I did not mention about my journey. I started back in India, started my journey there. Myself and Peter, we both belong to Tata Motors at one time. So I started my career with Tata Motors, was there with 7 years. I did my industrial design, did my engineering also, and then came here to the US 19 years ago as such. But since then till right now, I have always been a IDSA member. Why, I do not know, but I personally would say I gained a lot in learning from my counterparts. And it was just just a member, then eventually become a secretary. Means I never thought I would balance books or something, but that was a position was open. I became a secretary here in Michigan, then became the treasurer, then the co-chair, then the chair kind of a thing, then the divisional vice president, and eventually the board member a few years ago. And it, I would say it all depends on what you bring back from anywhere you go, right? You go to the ocean, you go with a spoon, you'll come back with a spoonful of water. You go with a wheelbarrow, you come back with a wheelbarrow of water. So it all depends on what ticks you, what helps you, how you go and apply yourself and learn through the other folks over there. I think I had great people around me. It worked a lot. I gained a lot as such. And right now, I do not know. Means your question was about IDSA, and what was the second part about?
What kind of engagement do you and Sundberg Farrar have with student organizations around Michigan?
So engagements means we try to support IDSA as much as we can, and other associations also as much as we can. When I say support, sometimes it might be going there as a volunteer speaker, or sometimes it's going to a conference and enjoying the newer inspirational ideas over there, or just business networking too. no matter what. Right now, all the watering holes are going dry. But eventually, I think after the COVID is gone, it will come back to hopefully the world of normalcy. And there are a couple of other associations also that I am a part of, where I try to go literally to make sure we exchange ideas and learn from each other. DMI is one of them. That's a pretty good one too. Design Management Institute. There is PDMA. There is HFES. There are many organizations. It all depends on what you take over there. Not just what you go to get, but what you contribute also.
Thank you very much for that.
Peter, how much time do we have? Means, what is the end? How are we doing on time? You are on mute, I think.
We have a few more minutes. I'd like to ask you about your connection and Sundberg Farrar's connection with the state of Michigan and the initiatives that the MDAC and so forth have you've helped with as far as the industrial design profession and community in Michigan.
That's a beautiful question. We also have one hand raised, so I will try to take that question after this. Michigan, a few years ago, under the tutelage of Rick Snyder, did a pretty massive kind of an, I would say, self-understanding of what Michigan would want to be, what it should have, what it has to be, what it was. At one time, it was a roaring 70s, 80s, the pinnacle, the epicenter of innovation over here, and then somehow manufacturing was lost, and other things were starting to lose. So all in all, it came down to understanding what can industrial design as a profession do to this kind of a system. And it all started when we looked at the numbers, and the numbers were like Michigan still has the highest amount of industrial designers as compared to any other state in the nation, not just per capita, the actual number of industrial designers too, because California is a pretty big state, but we still are number one, predominantly because of our automotive cluster over here, and also the furniture cluster on the west side. So how to bank on that? How to make sure we are still, I would say, attracting more industrial designers too. So LTU is here, CCS is here, Wayne State is here. Uh, excuse me. But how to make sure we are still producing more and retaining them, and not only that, but making sure companies would come over here to settle in the Michigan because of our industrial design powers. Industrial design is literally right now one of the best professions to be. I do not know whether it pays well as compared to any investment banker, but changes happen, and when big changes in the economies happen, I think new innovation is ripe over there. And apart from new invention or pure invention, innovation also is a pretty big element, and that's where the world of industrial designers is right for that. And that's why I think a few years ago, a few companies here, a dozen companies, big companies, small companies like us came together. We all, let's say, donated our time to get the thought leaders together, created a few exercises, trying to make sure we raise the awareness of what design can be. And now we are still continuing that as much as we can in this, let's say, newer government as such. But it's pretty proud to see our as a Michigander, our roots in this world, and then how we can still try to go and grab. When I say grab, other domains of the world, not just automotive. Automotive goes to transportation now, is going to the world of mobility. What else can be designed over here? So thanks for all LTU's help in making sure we are getting more and more industrial designers out there in the business world. We still need many industrial designers. There's a massive shortage of those.
Thank you.
I think I can't read the name, but there is a hand raised over here. What's your question?
Yeah, sorry. My name's Hunter Drake. I was just wondering, how do you guys manage to balance such functional projects while keeping the design aesthetics from the companies that you are hired on by, like specifically with the Tiger project? Such a functional project, but like how did you balance keeping Hyundai's design aesthetics with all those engineering technical solutions that don't necessarily look pretty, I guess.
That's a beautiful question, Hunter. Are you design or architect, or what's your background?
Yes, I'm a junior studying transportation design.
Great question. And this actually is I would actually use this as a loaded question wherever I go. And that question that any designer has to ask themselves is, when you start designing any product, let's say you have your pen in your hand, is going to touch the paper. At that time, what do you think? Do you think about the brand first, or do you think about the product first? And it's think about it. And I'm going to answer it right now. But you know, always understand one over another can be equally bad or equally good too. The element over here was, as I said, we are so lucky to have such amazing sponsors from Hyundai. They were letting us be completely unencumbered by the brand pillars of Hyundai. Because if you see, we do not need to transform any gesture lines or any grid or any grill structure from their current vehicles out to the next one. Typically, it happens for any family to family. You're designing the next BMW. It's going to be still fresh, but it will still have its own kidney stones or kidney beans over there, or kidney stones. I'm sorry. But this was not that perspective. This was completely a new to the world kind of a product architecture, and it literally came from understanding what needs to be solved. Maybe I should just share my screen for a second. One thing that we all know is the beauty part that you mentioned, or the pretty word that you use. It comes all the way late in any design, right? The first thing, the usefulness, the usability, the efficacy of use, the efficiency of use, the ergonomics of it, the architectural structure of it, and then it can be made presentable or maybe beautified if you want to be. So we literally went with those elements too. Right now, what is in front and center? We want to not develop, we want to deliver this amount of cargo. Okay, what is the cargo going to be? What might be the dimensions of it? What might be the weight of it? It literally starts, I think earlier that somebody said, inside out. Inside out is always a most ideal way to go, rather than from somewhere else. There will still be constraints from outside in. Eventually, we have to fit the cargo container size, which cannot be changed from here to eternity, and all those elements too, right? So it started with those fierce facts of what needs to happen, and then we let the design grow on itself, technically or literally help it grow on itself. And then eventually, once you get the entire packaging together, then you are still trying to work out the reasons of design, the laws of foreground, background, the cartoons, the proportions, the heft, the volume, as such, to make sure it still looks balanced. It looks the way it has to, as such. So there is still, aesthetics are still pretty strong, but they typically have to creep in at the end. And at the start, you're literally trying to solve the real needs of that ecosystem. And that has always been a predominant part of any product design, unless it's an extension of a typical car culture a few years ago. Now I think people, yes, the cars still on the road are typically following that. But this one is definitely not an everyday vehicle. It is a completely UMV, and ultimately a go anywhere vehicle as such. So we did not had any brand Bible book to go with. For we were developing it as we went forward. So as you go forward, you will see there is, I would say, some kind of a brand affinity between Elevate and Tiger. There would be affinity between Tiger and the next one coming in, but we are charting a completely different kind of a stream of aesthetics over here, not necessarily the typical ones that you will right now buy off a dealership.
Are there any other questions? Well, I think we've we've reached the end of the lecture, and I'd really like to thank Jeevak for his perspective not only on industrial design but on a company in our backyard and its context within Michigan and within the global world. Thank you very much, Jeevak. Liz Wetzel and Nur Saltik, as directors of programs at LTU for industrial design and transportation design, we thank you very much. We thank the students and the other adjuncts and the administration people and and all the others who've joined us today to listen to this lecture. So let's all wave our hands to Jeevak and thank him very much for his contribution today. And be sure to go look at Tiger X1 in the YouTube videos that are out there, because they're pretty dynamic to see in the YouTube videos. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Liz.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much. And with that, we'll close. Thank you.
All right.